Hello, everyone, and welcome to Neurocracy. Today, we're joined by Dr. Tracy Rupp, a research psychologist who studies sleep and human performance in the military and other operational settings. She's best known for her work on sleep banking, showing that extending sleep before periods of sleep deprivation can help improve alertness even when sleep becomes limited. Dr. Rupp, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure. I do just need to quickly say a disclaimer that all of the opinions here are my own and not part of the Department of War or the Henry Jackson Foundation for whom I work.
Thank you. So, my first question for you is what first got you interested in studying sleep?
Well, I loved health psychology when I went into college, and I thought I would be a clinical psychologist, and definitely was interested in exercise research and the mind-body connection. And then I took a class my junior year in college on sleep, and I just fell in love with the topic. And I think it does merge so much of the brain and the body, and there's so much unknown about the
Yeah,
mysteries of sleep that it
absolutely.
just hooked me right away.
Yeah. So how did you start focusing on sleep in the military and other like operational settings?
Sort of similarly, I was in graduate school this time, reading papers and being exposed to a lot of really cool sleep research. But the paper came out by Van Doggen and colleagues in the early 2000s, and then another similar paper by Belinkie and colleagues looking very heavily at performance. And I again just thought the idea of sleep and how it related to performance was so interesting, and the operational applicability for the military again just hooked me, and I got really excited about doing research that actually had some really valuable real world impact with the military.
Yeah. So when you say performance, what exactly does that mean?
Right, it's a good question. When we measure performance in the lab, it's by very sort of simple tasks, at least for this study and many others, like reaction time. So it's basically
Okay.
pressing a button. In real life, there's other executive functioning tasks. So there are tasks we measure on memory and emotional processing and things like that, and some of which were in my sleep banking study as well. But so everything from simple reaction time to more complex, even dual processing performance as well. But it's mostly
Interesting.
cognitive. When I talk about it, it's really cognitive performance.
Okay.
It's not physical performance from
Yeah.
my perspective.
So I asked because I did a research project recently with Rubik's cubes and how the time of day influences like performance and how like records set like world national records are associated with certain times of day. So I just thought it was interesting to see like how you measured performance. So
Yeah. That's
yeah.
super cool. We might need to think about doing that in studies. That's a good
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
so I wanted to ask you about the thing that's been on my mind ever since I reached out to you. What is sleep banking?
So we define it generally by thinking of it as a proactive strategy in that you plan ahead that you're going to have a period of sleep loss coming up. So that you plan ahead and you get in this case, 7 nights of sleep extension. So let's say you habitually sleep 7 hours a night and you know that next week you have midterms or things that you're going to really not get enough sleep. You're going to say, okay, for a couple of nights, as many nights as I can, I'm going to try to sleep for 10 hours, 9 or 10 hours, and you try to sort of fill your reserves up of sleep, thinking about it as sort of overflowing your cup. So then when you're deprived, you have these extra resources to draw on.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. So, from your research, like practically, how like efficient or how well does this work?
It works really well. And
Okay.
the interesting thing to me that I love is it doesn't, at least based on this study and a few others following it, it doesn't only work to help protect during the period of sleep restriction, it also helps you recover more quickly, which I
Um,
again love too. So that it's sort of dual actioning. So during the period of not sleeping well enough, and then also when you recover, your performance is going to recover more quickly because you've had those prior reserves,
yeah,
is what
I
we
see.
show.
So, one of the things that I'm working on right now, I think I mentioned in the email too, is I'm working with the senator to hopefully down the road pass a bill on pushing down or pushing back high school start times. And for context, my high school starts at 7:30 a.m. And as we both know, Dr. Mary Kerskaden has done a lot of
Mhm.
research and shown that 8:30 a.m. is kind of like that gold standard for school start times. So I'm curious, like. Does this, so I know you said 7 nights of sleep extension. Is there any application where like a teenager could be sleep banking on a weekend to prepare for the upcoming week at school? So yeah, I'm just curious about how that would work.
Sure. And I'm honestly curious too. So we don't have the data to say the dose response of how many nights you need. So we don't know if it's 2 nights, if it's 3 nights, because
Okay.
our study was on 7 nights. But
Okay.
I think we could extrapolate the findings to say that yes, getting a couple nights of sleep is going to be beneficial. How beneficial, we don't know.
Okay. So
Yeah.
another thing I'm also curious about, like in terms of applications, and I'm not sure if like you've done projects on this too, but sometimes in like healthcare, you have people who need to work like night shifts or long hours, maybe even like residents, for instance. So how can sleep banking like connect to that side of healthcare?
Yeah, it's a great question. And my understanding is that it is actually being encouraged and used in shift workers and healthcare situations.
Okay.
Now, my understanding from resident training is they don't have a lot of days off that they could do
Yeah,
numerous
yeah, yeah,
sleep
yeah. That makes
taking,
sense.
but of course, whenever they can. And there's a question of is napping that potentially contributing to sleep banking too? Again, we don't know that if the napping hours, but maybe for residents and others, taking some naps and again, filling those reserves might have similar protective effects as well.
Okay. So kind of like related to that or like a continuation of that idea, do siestas count as sleep banking, like a midday nap, for instance?
It's a good question and it's
Okay.
not defined. So as far
Okay.
as our study, it wasn't included. And in fact, our participants were not allowed to nap. However,
Okay.
I think, in the real world situation, and when you think of how you can practically use this information, personally, I'm all for the nap.
Yeah.
I think you would have to do longer naps to really contribute to sleep banking. And
Right.
often for naps, we recommend just 20 or 30 minutes to keep the sleep inertia from setting in and to
Yeah.
really help you stay alert. But for sleep banking purposes, I would recommend a longer nap, an hour or maybe 3 hours, even if you're doing it for sleep banking.
Okay. And just to, like make it clear, I think you might have mentioned this, but I kind of forgot. Did you say how long like a extra like an extension of sleep has to be for it to count as
There,
sleep banking?
there's no has to. In our
Okay.
study, we did 10 hours a night for a week.
Okay.
The
So
amount of
all
sleep
right.
they actually, that was so 10 hours time in bed. The amount of sleep they got was probably closer to 8.5 or 9,
Okay.
which some people might consider normal sleep. So I would just say extending it beyond your normal amounts of sleep to some
Okay.
degree.
Yeah.
An
And
hour
then
here, maybe an hour on each end.
okay, that's interesting. Yeah. And the reason I brought up like the siesta earlier is because it's always like interesting for me to think of things from like an evolutionary perspective. And I think like when you look for example like tribes or cultures not connected with electricity, for instance, you see that a lot of humans follow like a biphasic sleep pattern. So I guess like I was just curious how that like siesta and midday naps kind of connected with sleep banking. But yeah. So
Yeah.
okay, yeah. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So, I wanted to ask also about like in terms of performance, like what parts of cognition are most protected by sleep banking, or what are most benefited specifically?
Yeah, that's a good question too. We saw reaction time was the number one, and
Okay,
reaction time is very simple, but it has implications for things like driving, right? So even
yeah.
though reaction time is a very simple test, no, in many ways it can affect their real world operations.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like how you mentioned driving actually, because I think one of the most harmful effects of sleep deprivation in teenagers, like due to early school start times, is when teenagers are driving on the road and they're sleep deprived. And studies already show that certain levels of sleep deprivation affecting driving are the same as like driving under the influence. And when you add to that, that maybe like reaction times are also worsened, then that definitely like poses I think a health hazard to lots of people on the road. But yeah.
100%. And just a sidebar from that, we did a study at Dr. Kurskadin's lab showing that
Okay.
even extended waking, so staying up just 2 or 3 hours later, was about equivalent to about 2 drinks of vodka tonics. So even just that
Oh wow.
extended waking, yeah, on reaction time and cognitive performance. So you're exactly right about that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so one thing I always hear like when we're talking about like circadian rhythms and just sleep in general is how genetics like causes the same like amount of sleep or the same like habits to present differently or have different benefits. So I'm curious like how does like sleep banking work differently for some people or like where's like some of that variation? Where do we see some of that?
You have really great questions that we
Oh,
should follow because we don't know. So we don't
okay.
know what the genetic traits are that might
Okay. Yeah.
contribute. My guess is if that you're genetically a short sleeper, that sleep banking may not have quite as much benefit, or maybe
Okay,
you
right.
need to just do a little more to get benefits. And if you're a genetically longer sleeper, then maybe you need to do even more.
Yeah.
But we actually we don't know. Or maybe if you're
Interesting.
genetically longer sleeping, you're already protect it? Again, those are really good questions that
Okay.
we didn't answer
Yeah.
to. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, a lot of my questions are like fun, like theoretical.
I
So
love it. I love
yeah.
it. Yeah. Good ideas.
I guess another question I had, this one's kind of related to sleep banking, but on like a longer scale. So I know we keep coming back to this idea of teenagers and school start times, but so in the summer, like right, teenagers have a very generally flexible sleep schedule, and let's say like a teenager is getting lots of sleep, like the perfect amount, maybe even like 8 to 9 hours, and then school starts. Does all that like do those like 2, 3 months in the like during summer break? Does that count as sleep banking, or is this like too macro level for it to really benefit?
That's a great question. And I would say it's probably twofold. My guess, and I do have teenagers at home, so I see
Okay.
this, is my guess is at the beginning of the summer, you all are kind of paying back your sleep debt. Because you've accrued a lot of sleep debt over the
Yeah,
school
that's
year
true.
with everything. And then, after finals. So you kind of pay back some of your sleep debt when you're sleeping in. And that we hypothesize, so some disagree, is different from sleep banking. So sort of refilling your reserves to the
Okay.
point that you need to sustain normal performance, paying back your sleep debt is different than sleep banking, which might happen the latter half of the summer when you're home because you've caught up in your
Yeah.
sleep debt. Then you can get more sleep, right? And kind of fill up
Oh,
your
yeah.
reserves for extra. So you
Yeah.
might think this summer, the first bit paying the sleep debt, the second half trying to refill up your reserves in preparation
Interesting.
for the
Yeah.
school year.
So
So
like
I
you're
think
either
it's
in sleep debt or you're in
positive.
excess, and that's kind of like the sleep banking, and that's kind of like filling in the that. That's an
Yeah.
interesting way to think about
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
But I know teenagers work hard sometimes in the summer too with jobs and seeing
That's
friends.
true.
So I don't know that you guys are all getting your full
Yeah, yeah, that's
sleep,
why
but
I said like in an ideal
yeah,
world, because I personally
yeah.
know like not everyone's actually having much better sleep schedule in the summer either. So
But maybe the week before school starts, teenagers can really think about, okay, the week before school starts, I'm
yeah,
going to actually focus on sleep. And from your circadian rhythms work of waking up at a decent hour and not sleeping to a noon the best you can,
yeah,
doing it. So that goes hand in hand too.
yeah. So what are some of like the most interesting potential applications of sleep banking? And you can kind of talk about like the military benefits too, obviously, but I'm just curious if you have any other like interesting thoughts about like where it could be applied as well.
Yeah, you've talked about it for teenagers, and I think that is important because
Okay.
again, we know teenagers and even kids. So, just from my own personal experience as a mom, I do tell my kids if they have a period coming up of midterms or things like that, to the nights before that, to really prioritize sleep.
Hmm.
Another way I think it's really interesting is there was a few years ago, pilot study by Tim Rears and his colleagues looking at banking sleep before you go into surgery and then
Oh,
showing actually improved recovery from surgery
wow.
in those who did. And so we're actually just starting a study with patients who are in our own lab who are going through surgery after having sleep extension or not, and seeing if their pain outcomes are better. So I think there's all sorts of ways, and there is evidence suggesting that. So I've talked about cognitive performance, but there's evidence suggesting that sleep extension and sleep banking might actually have some physical benefits too. In this case, we're looking at it with pain and surgery outcomes.
Yeah. So I believe you do like a lot of research with pain and like that kind of world. So I'm curious, like I know you've started talking about it a little bit. How have you kind of like explored that in relation with sleep or kind of in its own way, either like in parallel? So I'm just curious.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I came about it around a very roundabout way. So from sleep research, I actually became an acupuncturist in part
Okay.
because acupuncture is wonderful for sleep, and acupuncture, the research is actually really good. I did a little work on acupuncture for improving sleep.
Wow. Okay.
But what I often notice in my patients with sleep and pain is they would come to me for acupuncture for pain, but their sleep improved so much, and then their pain also improved. So the
Wow.
question is getting more sleep improving the pain, or is it's a very bi-directional
Yeah.
relationship with sleep and pain. So we all know that we're in pain, we don't sleep very well, right? So when
Hmm.
you improve the pain, you also improve the sleep. So I came to
Yeah.
pain research sort of from sleep to seeing that bi-directional relationship and wanting to improve both for people.
Yeah. That's interesting. So I guess like do you have any like ideas why perhaps the acupuncture is beneficial in sleep or like maybe quality or that kind of
Mhm.
yes, thing?
A lot of, I know this, I don't have any mechanistic ideas, unfortunately, because it's not
Okay.
my expertise.
Yeah.
But I do know that acupuncture relieves stress and anxiety, and there's good evidence for that, which is so important for sleep. So we know that with insomnia, anxiety plays a large role in that. And I know, so acupuncture, mindfulness, all those sorts of mind-body modalities really help with stress and anxiety, which can also really improve sleep.
Yeah. And then for my last question here, I just wanted to ask like in terms of sleep banking, like pain, like research, what research in the sleep world are you most excited to contribute to or like do you see being the most interesting in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, I love sleep banking because it's a behavioral intervention for sleep. So pharmacologics
Yeah.
certainly have their place, are important,
Hmm.
but my passion, what I'm most interested in seeing is other non-pharmacologic interventions. So I
Yeah.
mentioned acupuncture, and I think looking at acupuncture and yoga and mindfulness and all the different ways they can be combined, whether for military application or for everyone, as ways to improve sleep and maximize performance are important and exciting areas for future research.
That's cool. Yeah, I think I'm definitely gonna be looking into how like maybe sleep banking can help me in my life now because now I've been able to talk with someone who's like pioneering some of the research there, and it's definitely something that's never like I've never really thought about it. Like the idea of banking sleep before like knowing, for example, like you said, like midterms, especially as a teenager, I think that could be really relevant because I think it's gonna take some time for policy, especially with like the early school start times. And as I'm like personally working on it, I can tell it's a very slow, long process. So I think for teenagers and just people in general, like who it can benefit from, that it's such a powerful like tool to be able to utilize. Um, and sleep is just so like fundamental to life too that I just think that it has so many benefits that we don't even realize sometimes. And that's why the research is just always in like you'd be surprised and or I guess you wouldn't be, but like I would be surprised or I am surprised by like how many connections it has across like so many disciplines. Like I've been doing these recent interviews on lighting and like lighting interventions, and it's always so cool to like talk about sleep and just its connections. So
It's endless,
yeah,
the possibilities. And even the questions you brought up today, it's just fascinating. So
yeah,
thank you. It's great.
yeah.
It's fun.
Thank
Mhm.
you.